It's Monday morning. Good morning. And this morning, I would like to talk about, a little bit about anyway, Isreal Regardie. This is probably his second most popular work. Of course, he became famous by publishing the Rituals of the Stella Matutina, one of the inheritors of the Golden Dawn tradition, which he was criticized for giving away all those secrets. But thankfully, they triggered a occult revival that we're all still enjoying today. But when he first wrote The Eye in the Triangle, I'm trying to find the first edition date. Crowley was still not only obscure, but when he wasn't being obscure, he was being totally vilified. I'm going to read some of my words about Regardie because many years after I read the first edition of Eye in the Triangle, fate had conspired to have me write a preface or a foreword to a new edition of the book that so affected me. But anyway, here's how Regardie starts out. There's a time to speak and a time to remain silent. For me, the time has come now to raise my voice in the interest of clarifying the record of Aleister Crowley. He was one of the greatest mystics of all time, although a very complicated and controversial person. He has too long suffered from misrepresentation and vilification at the hands of uninformed biographers. It's time to finally set the record straight. This must be done not merely out of regard for the man himself, but even more importantly because of the profound effect he has had on thousands of readers and will yet have on countless thousands more. John Symonds, his major biographer, evinces throughout his narrative a total contemptuous attitude toward Crowley. This hostility altogether invalidates his attempt at a biography. His book, The Great Beast, and if you've ever read it, you come away with not a very good impression of Aleister Crowley. His book, The Great Beast, could have been excellent since every opportunity in the world was given him through access to diaries and the mass of heretofore unpublished material. Crowley had appointed him executor of his literary estate. And because of this, Symonds had a unique opportunity to set the record straight once and for all. However, his personal prejudices got in the way. His writing is cynical, showing no glimmer of insight or the slightest trace of sympathy. Now, Regardie goes on with a very, very fine preface to the work. And if you haven't read it, you owe it to yourself to find it and get it. This copy is from New Falcon, and other editions are available everywhere. This is my opening words. I guess I wrote the introduction. and it's got my favorite picture of Regardie. Now, he didn't look quite like that when Constance and I met him, but he was very, very sophisticated and cool. Can you hear me, dear? Well, she's out there. He charmed Constance immediately. He was almost suave, but he had this slightest sort of English, almost working class accent, but he was very clever. Constance and I visited his house in Studio City, and we were taken there by Grady McMurtry. Okay, and we visited him in the morning, and then Regardie took us out to brunch afterwards. And I can't tell you how relieved I was over this whole Thelema thing after meeting Regardie. It was very nice to have someone that you wish you could grow up to be like. But anyway, here's how I started. Do you have any words to say about Regardie, dear?
He was a very attractive older man.
He was a very attractive older man.
No, he had magnetism, I thought.
He did indeed. And what did he serve us for?
Champagne cocktails when we arrived.
Poured a little sugar cube on top of a cocktail glass.
I think he'd done it many times before.
It looked like he was.
He could have done it in his sleep.
He probably did it every morning himself, whether there were guests.
Oh, don't say that.
Or anyway. So, like Paramahansa Yogananda, and this is the only thing that we have that I'm like Paramahansa Yogananda. I remember every meal I ever had. So we remember the champagne cocktails. And when we went out to eat in Studio City, I had eggs Benedict. No, I had eggs Florentine. So, okay, but you don't care about that. I started off with an epigram by Regardie himself. Crowley once said that if a man wanted to begin the study of magic because he wished to evoke a demon to kill his enemy, that would be all right too. For the student would soon discover the hierarchical structure of the world of magic. That is to say, the demon in question could not be controlled or ordered until the student had made contact with the entity immediately superior. And this entity would only be beseeched to function in terms of his superior, and so on. Very shortly then, the student would be constrained to invoke in a direct line the God or spiritual force ruling over all such operations. In that case, he would have to unite his consciousness with that of the God. By that time, so many transformations in consciousness would have taken place that the original malefic intent would have disappeared and been replaced by other more worthy and higher aspirations. How's that for a one-paragraph explanation of Solomonic hierarchical theory and practice? Okay, that was a quote from this book. I never met Aleister Crowley. He died 7 months and 11 days before I was born. No, I do not believe I'm Aleister Crowley. I've never entertained the fantasy that I am or was Aleister Crowley. In fact, since earliest childhood, I've been haunted by rather clear memory visions of who I probably was in at least one previous life. And I assure you, none of these memories have anything to do with Aleister Crowley, or indeed any person of legendary or notable historical significance. Over the past 40 years, that's when I wrote this, it's closer to 50 now, because of my dubious reputation as some kind of magical authority, I've been contacted by a fair number of individuals who inform me with straight-faced earnestness that they are living incarnations of Aleister Crowley, the Beast 666, and that I must immediately write a book recognizing them as such. They proffer abundant evidence, Kabbalistic synchronicities, birth dates, address or telephone numbers, recurring dreams of wild orgies, and shopping receipts totaling $6.66. When I first met Francis Isreal Regardie in 1976, we discovered we both had a collection of such colorful contacts. We swapped a couple of accounts, then resolved then and there it'd be great fun to pool our Crowley incarnation stories and letters in a book that we would title Lieber Nuts. We both were half serious about the project, and in the years that followed, he would occasionally call and send me out to investigate other neighborhood Crowley manifestations. Predictably, the whimsical project never manifested. Regardie died in 1985, and with him, Lieber Nuts. Although I found an empty file titled Lieber Nuts in his effects. No matter what you may have read to the contrary on the internet, I was not Regardie's magical apprentice, nor was I his formal student. I was never personally initiated by him into any of the Golden Dawn or AA or OTO or any other thing. I can, however, proudly and with no small measure of awe and humility, claim him as one of my earliest and most influential magical mentors. He made himself available whenever I had specific questions about magic and Crowley, and he was generous with his time, information, and opinions. He was also supportive of our OTO lodge in Newport Beach and donated duplicate books from his own substantial library and other magical trinkets. Before I met him, however, he was, in my mind at least, an unapproachable god, a mysterious mythological character straight out of the distant legendary past, like Merlin, or John Dee, or Cagliostro, or Woodman and Westcott, Mathers and Aleister Crowley. In 1972, Constance gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, and the DuQuettes were magically transformed from a young hippie couple to a family. This was also the year I abandoned a drug-energized decade of dangerously successful work as a musician and a recording artist, and pretentiously began my holy grail quest for respectability and stability. Since then, and at the time it was 45 years later, I must sadly confess I'm still failing spectacularly at this quest. However, during that youthful transitional period, I did discover something even more precious than the poisonous anesthesia of American middle-class predictability. I found magic, and the works of Edward Alexander Aleister Crowley. As any magician will tell you, magic isn't anything like people think it is. In fact, magic isn't anything like anyone thinks it is. Magic stops being magic when someone can explain it to you. And magic stops being magic when you think you can explain it to others. It's a real paradox, and it's supposed to be a paradox. It's all very Zen. Still, for some of us, we are irresistibly drawn to the art form of magic, and make no mistake, magic is the most colorful and powerful spiritual art form. Not because we believe it's the only path to enlightenment, or even that it is a good one, but because something magical, already bubbling away inside us, tells us that it's our path. In 1928, a 20-year-old British-born American art student, Francis Isreal Regardie, that's R-E-G-U-D-Y, later he changed it to Regardie, was snared by his attraction and bravely abandoned his privileged family home in Washington, D.C., and set sail for Paris to become a live-in disciple of the notorious Aleister Crowley, the self-proclaimed world teacher and prophet of the new aeon. As readers will soon discover, the Eye in the Triangle is Regardie's extended commentary on his years with the great beast and the life and works of his infamous former employer. Moreover, the book is an attempt at an insightful, if not completely objective, analysis of the psychological processes that cause Crowley to tick so peculiarly. At the same time, Regardie's observation might also give us some insight as to what might have been making Regardie tick so peculiarly. You may find much in the Eye in the Triangle that is dated by today's psychological sophisticated standards. Jung is no longer so new and daring and as far as sexual matters go, there's very little that today unsettles us in the least. In the mid-1970s, when I first read The Eye in the Triangle, it was the only proper biography of Crowley available. John Simon's 1951 laughably bad The Great Beast, and Crowley's own confessions, which we've been reading out in the last few days. It's wonderful, but it's hardly complete or objective. Both of those biographies were pretty much the only things I could get my hands on at the time. Things are mercifully better for students of today in Dr. Richard Kaczynski's Perdurabo, The Life of Aleister Crowley, will likely remain the most complete, accurate, objective Crowley biography for many years to come. And if you don't have a copy of Perdurabo, and you're interested in Aleister Crowley, or you think you are, get it. It's wonderful. It's the best. I can't see a better one coming along anytime soon. As an apologist for Crowley, Regardie must be given high marks for rising above the cruel, small, and nasty injuries Crowley inflicted upon him as a young man in the years following their association. I believe it was not easy for him to do this. I don't believe he did it as some form of 12-step program forgiveness gesture to make him feel better in his final years. Rather, I simply believe he came to a place in his life where he could put the entire wonderful and painful experience in perspective. He recognized that the brilliance of Crowley's genius transcended and eclipsed his mystical his myriad and serious human flaws. He recognized it was his duty to mankind, his duty to the advancement of human thought, to allow the world to see the blazing sun of Aleister Crowley's genius and the soul-liberating message he tried to deliver. Obviously, I'm a very big fan of Aleister Crowley and his work. This is due in large part to Dr. Regardie and his various works on the subject of magic. I sing Crowley's praises a lot. I write books that are extended commentaries on Crowley's works. He constantly amazes and inspires me. He's my holy prophet. On the other hand, in reading Crowley, I'll run across something he said or wrote, something during his 72 incredible years that shocks me, disgusts me, that outrages me. I know for certain I would not have liked Aleister Crowley on a personal level. We would not have gotten on. And in that respect, I'm glad he's dead. But Crowley was a genius. Have you ever been lucky or unlucky enough to spend time in close proximity to a real over-the-top bona fide genius for any length of time? An artist, a writer, a filmmaker, a dancer, a mathematician. I have. It's hard. It's frustrating. Sometimes it's even dangerous. Not because the genius is trying to be rude, thoughtless, or arrogant. To we mortals, it may seem like the genius is behaving like an insane jerk. But the genius, more often than not, is completely oblivious or unconcerned to the effects he or she has on others. It's because the art of the genius is the soul of the genius. The body, the mind, the personality, the character, the appetites, the dreams, the hopes, the fears are only servants to their art. And God help anyone or anything that gets in the way of the genius in his or her art. Crowley was a genius, and his body of work is a masterpiece, just as real a masterpiece as a Beethoven symphony or a painting by Da Vinci or a work by Michelangelo. It's true, Crowley had many monstrous shortcomings, but so did Beethoven, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo. They were all mad as hatters. They still created immortal, consciousness-elevating works. Through their genius, they manifested truth, and truth is bigger than any fragile and illusionary personality. It took Regardie many years to put behind him the stings of personal injuries he suffered from Crowley's pen point. But he eventually did, and we are all enriched by his act of posthumous magnanimity. The image of the eye in the triangle, of course, has many magical and mystical connotations. It's certainly a profound and appropriate title for Regardie's treatment of the life and works of Aleister Crowley. I believe, however, that it also represents the opening of Regardie's own eye to the spiritual significance of Crowley's contributions to the evolution of human consciousness. and to the importance of his own vital role and responsibility in presenting it to the world. Now, Regardie died in 1985, and everybody immediately knew that this was the passing of not only a great man, but an era. And everybody who ever met him, even a little bit, was affected by his magnetism, his charm. And as is always the case when a great soul dies, people rush to write immemoriums and tributes to the great man. But it seems to be sort of a universal characteristic of magicians who because of their magical work, they become observers of their own existence, which is exactly what a magician should be, an observer of their own existence. Sometimes that bleeds over into less admirable manifestations of egotism. Am I being too kind? So after he died, there were a lot of people publishing immemoriums to his passing, but they almost all turned out to immediately be testimonies to how much Regardie loved them and how much Regardie respected their work. And it became comical. Okay, it actually became comical. And you know something is really funny when you can just read it straight and it becomes its own self-parody. Well, there was a lot of that going on. And you might even take my introduction here that I've just read to you as being dangerously close to that. I hope not. I tried not to make it that. But I had the opportunity to, I wrote a parody, okay? Actually, Constance and I sort of put our heads together and wrote this parody because we were so kind of disgusted by all of these self-serving immemoriums. And at the time, there was a wonderful magazine called Metzla, and I said I'd like to write an memorandum, I called it. Do you remember doing this, dear?
Oh yeah. Ron has no shame.
So here it is, Isreal Regardie. His favorite student remembers, by Frater Stonehenge Equinox. As told by Lon Milo DuQuette. It wasn't long after Isreal Regardie met me that his health began to fail. Even though we met in person only twice, I still managed to have a profound effect upon his life. They say you never have a second chance to make a good first impression. And if I must say so myself, Regardie's first impression of me was a lasting one. At the time, I did not know his address, so I staked out his post office box in Studio City. After 3 days, he finally arrived to pick up his mail. He almost missed his chance to meet me, for alas, I had fallen asleep on the sidewalk near the newspaper racks in front of the building. Destiny, however, could not be thwarted, and the gods guided his tiny footsteps to tread upon my left hand and forearm. Luckily, he was not hurt in the fall, and as I helped him gather his mail from the gutter, I seized the opportunity to introduce myself. Equinox is my name. Stonehenge Equinox. You're the reason I'm into magic. He responded with an astounding display of mental telepathy. I don't suppose you're insured, he asked, not concealing the fact that he already knew the answer. I followed him to his car where I displayed my tattoos and treated him to an impromptu performance of my original diagonal pillar ritual. He feigned disinterest, but I could tell he was favorably impressed. He feigned disinterest, but I could tell. Great magicians don't need words to communicate with each other. And so I was not surprised to see him speed off in his car without uttering a sound. Although he did gesture. Our next meeting was more mystical and intimate. As Providence ordained, I found his phone number scrawled on the restroom wall at the Bodhi Tree bookstore in West Hollywood and immediately gave him a call. Playfully disguising my voice, I told him I had thrown my back out and made an appointment for a chiropractic adjustment. There's no question that the man was omniscient, but he seemed genuinely surprised to see me when I and my then girlfriend, Diana Ishtar Sophia Morgana, appeared at his door. The dear man asked if I had come for the spinal adjustment and voiced his delight that I had brought someone to help me home. What a saint. And you know he was right. After his treatment, I was unable to walk for 3 weeks. Thus began a 5-year odyssey of intense spiritual correspondence. Every Friday, I mailed him my magical record, dream diary, semen sigils, and excerpts from my still unfinished novel, Sex Wizards of Phlegm. Each week, like clockwork, my letters and packages were returned to me, seemingly unopened and unedited. However, to a trained clairvoyant such as myself, adept in traveling in the spirit vision, these silent messages were a treasure chest of deeply personal magical instructions and encouragement. Each page dripped with his energy, and all were alive with psychically transmitted practical advice, initiatory ordeals, and occult secrets. It was in this manner that he consecrated me psychopomp of North Hollywood. Then, shortly before his death, he chose to abandon our astral correspondence and communicate to me on the material plane by actually writing me a letter. It was in this last letter that he poignantly revealed his deep personal affection for me by beginning his message by addressing me as dear. It was also in this letter that he revealed a mystic precognition of his own impending death. After advising me on matters of mental health, personal hygiene, and the proper use of the English language, he closed with these chillingly prophetic words. It'll not be necessary for you to ever contact me again.
You cracked yourself up.
I crack myself up. Yes, I do. Okay, anything you'd like to add to our Stonehenge equinox? Okay. Until tomorrow, when it'll probably be in some parking lot, someplace,
And the rain will probably have stopped.
and the rain will probably have stopped by then. We hope.
We like rain. Our yard floods.
We flood here. Okay, until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Love is the law, love under will.
Bye-bye.